Welcome to the presentation on terminology used in special ed assessment. For this presentation, we will be going over the following topics: measurement terminology, reliability in testing, validity in testing, the different types of testing, and terminology used with assessment and assessment reporting. When dealing with assessment, it's important to understand the terms used for measurement and how we synthesize the information of numerous scales into recognizable and universal terms. The first area is the 4 measurement scales. These scales represent ways to order data that may or may not have numerical components. The first, nominal scales, help us categorize information. There is no numerical value attached. An example of this type of scale would be taking a used car lot and parking the cars together by their brand, with a section for Ford, Toyota, Chevy, etc. The next scale is ordinal. Ordinal scales place items or people in a ranking order, using a first, second, or third description, with no numerical value added to it. For example, if we rank the best artist in the class, it only puts them in order. It doesn't give any indication of how much better or worse they are than each other. The next is interval. With interval scales, there are equal units of measurement. The distance between 1 and 2 is the same as between 9 and 10. These can also have non-numerical rankings attached to them, but you will always have a number. Finally, there are ratio scales. These scales have a true zero starting point, and they have equal units of measurement. These include data which has information on items such as height or weight. These are more rare in educational assessment, and interval scales are the most prominent ones that we'll find within our education assessments. The second area that we look at is descriptive statistics. Descriptive statistics are used to universally describe all of the scales and have common reporting elements. The most common descriptors are mean, median, and mode. The mean is the average of all the scores. The median is the middle score from the set, and the mode is the most common value of the set. Another one that we hear a lot is standard deviation. But what exactly is it, besides a very scary looking equation? Standard deviation determines variability. It takes every scorer's relationship to the mean into account to determine if there is a large variance in the scores. In other words, how close or far does each score fall from the average of all the scores put together? And this will give us how much variance there will be from score to score. Finally, there is the range in correlation. Correlation looks at the relationship between scores. In other words, how do the scores affect each other, either in a positive or negative manner? And range is how the highest and lowest scatter. So how, if you have a test score set that goes from 10 to 45, your range is 10 to 45. It just takes the lowest and the highest and puts them as boundaries. Reliability in testing. Reliability means consistency. Obtaining consistent results when dealing with assessment is critical. If the test is unreliable, then your results are unreliable. And this can impact the eligibility of students for services, and it can also compromise trust between reporting the information to parents and colleagues. It can compromise the trust you have in your instrument, and it can compromise how people feel about the results that you're giving, whether or not they're a true indicator of where the student is at. An example of reliability is if your paper boy delivers the paper at 6 a.m. every day, he's very reliable. If he delivered it at 7 in the morning, 10 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and was very random, he would be unreliable. Validity in testing. Validity is the extent to which a test measures what it says it will measure. Validity and reliability are very closely related. The best practice is to choose assessments that are rated highly in both the areas of validity and reliability. One of the main questions to ask is, does the assessment fit the needs of the student? Does it fit the needs and concerns that we're looking for getting results on? And is the tester qualified to provide the test to the student? An example of validity is if we had a test that says it's going to measure how well you know the states and capitals. But when you get the test, all the questions ask you about the state birds. The test isn't very valid because it isn't testing you on what it claims to be. So standardized testing, what is it? These are tests that are usually commercially prepared for nationwide use and are designed to provide accurate information on student performance in relation to their same-age peers and grade levels. An example, most popular example that we have would be the SATs, the college entrance exams, and the ACTs. These are all very popular standardized testings. Standardized tests are typically used in school settings, and there are 3 specific types that are used. The first type is aptitude tests. Aptitude tests are designed to test ability. The most common that we see are IQ tests. IQ tests are designed to give an overall view of how well a student will deal with abstract thinking, how well they will learn and apply concepts, and how well they solve problems. Multi-factor aptitude battery tests deal more with a breakdown of specific skills. An example would be a test that is trying to get a reading on or report in numbers on reading readiness tests or math comprehension tests, math calculation and computation testing. And those are aptitude battery tests. The next is norm reference tests. And these focus on skills or abilities that are traditionally taught in schools. Types of norm reference tests are achievement batteries that we see, such as the Iowa Basics. They are administered to a class, they take several days, and are monitored over the years. So the results that we have, the reports that come back, go into the student's cumulative file and follow them so we can see how progress has been made from year to year, or every other year is typically how we can see those. Diagnostic tests focus on one subject area, and they are usually reading or math. And these are most often used in identifying students for specific learning disabilities. The last of the norm reference tests are subject area achievement tests, and these tests fall in line with the exact curriculum that the district uses. They're designed to align with the district or state standards and test very narrowly to how those standards are written. The last type of standardized test is the criterion reference test, and they can be given in a variety of ways, such as surveys, diagnostic testing, and single subject testing. They are designed to measure objectives, and they're not looking at the whole subject picture, they're looking at specific objectives of the test. This is why they are also referred to as objective reference tests. The main difference between criterion and norm reference tests is how they are scored. Criterion tests are focused on the number of objectives correct rather than the total scores of the test. No matter what test you're giving, be sure that it fits the needs of the student. It is non-biased, the test giver is trained, and it is technically sound. Terminology used during testing. The following is the terminology that you'll see during testing. Protocol is the first that we'll look at, and it's just another word for record. The form that we fill out to keep track of responses and record identifying information is the protocol. One thing that is crucial is not to let the students see the protocol unless the test calls for it. Sometimes, depending on how we hold the protocol and how we mark correct or incorrect answers, students sometimes try to take a peek at them. So it's important to have those out of view unless the test calls for it. The second area is rapport, and this is a large part of testing procedures. It's the time that you have to build the trust with the student before you get into testing. And this isn't a very large window because you don't have a lot of time to get to know the student. You have to get in there, you need to get the testing done so you can move on with the reports and the qualifying procedures. Several things should happen while building rapport, and that's introduction of the tester to the student. Let the student know who you are, introduce yourself so that you can put them at ease. A lot of times you'll be the person that they're meeting for the first time, and so they're going to be a little leery of giving a lot of information. They might be pretty shy. So make sure that you're friendly and you introduce who you are and what you're doing. This is also the time to get general information from the student. You're going to need to know their birthday, you're going to need to know, their last name. And while you can get all these things from the record or from the cumulative file or from the regular ed teacher, it's always good to ask the student because that shows that you're asking about them, you want to know about them, and it's another good area for rapport building. Tell them why you're testing. I wouldn't necessarily tell them that you're testing them for special ed, but let them know that we're going to work on a test together and see how well you do with math, or we're going to put together, if you're doing an IQ test, we're going to put together some puzzles and just kind of make the test open and make it seem friendly, not scary to them, because a lot of kids have test anxiety, and to perform or to do things, especially with somebody they don't know, it can really either have them close off or, maybe they'll refuse. It just kind of depends on the student. But, make sure they know why they're going to be tested. Let them know of the test activities, if they're going to be manipulating things, if they're going to have to do spelling, if they're going to have to do work out math problems. Let them just know what they can expect, because that will put them at ease and relieve some anxiety. And then also finally, encourage student questions. Students probably will ask, what do you do? Why are you here? They'll direct a lot to you. They may direct a lot on the, why do I have to do this test? And just kind of building rapport, answering their questions, putting them at ease can make it a lot easier to go through the testing time that you have to spend together. One of the important things is, good rapport is key. If there's issues, if the student is refusing to work for you, it's okay to have another qualified person take over. The results have to be unbiased, and they have to be accurate for reporting. So if you have a student that refuses to do the math portion of the test, or if they refuse to work with you, it can really skew their results, and it can affect eligibility for services. The next term is basal. This is a point in the test that we can assume that the student would receive credit for easier test questions. For example, if you're testing a 13-year-old, we can assume that he'll be able to identify his letters in the spelling part of the test. If the test has A, B, and F, and they have to tell you what the letter is, we can assume that they're probably going to know how to do that. Usually the test will provide you a starting point based on age and grade level, and so you can go straight to that point and start the testing from there. Ceiling is the opposite of the basal. It's the point in the test where we can assume that the student would not receive credit for harder test questions. For example, if you had a first grader, it would be safe to assume that they wouldn't be able to perform the algebraic equations on the math portion of their test. Typically, tests provide the guidelines for ceiling information with the number of items incorrect to stop the test. So, for example, if a student had 4 wrong answers in a row, that would be a cue to move on to the next section. And the test laid that out pretty well as to what the ceiling and what the basal will be. If you're using different tests, just make sure to note that, because where you stop or how you calculate that can affect reporting. So, terminology used for assessment reporting. There are many statistical terms used in assessment reporting. There's much more to it than a simple pass or fail. And although most tests have computer programs now that run the scores and calculate the reports and write them out for us, it's still important to know what the information means so that you can clearly report the results to parents or to colleagues. The raw score is the first numbers that are going to be calculated. For any type of test that has a subtest, this is the number that the student got correct. For example, if you had a spelling test and there are 25 points possible and your student got 14 right, 14 is their raw score for that test. Chronological age is the number of years and months since the child was born. This is in relation to the day the test was given. So the reporting will take you right up into that day with year, month, and day to calculate out the age of the student. Age and grade scores, these are two ways that results can be reported. Typically with the computer programs, you can check what one you want the scores reported in. If you choose age, you're going to have that the student is, let's say, functioning in math at a 12.6 grade level, or 12 month, 12 year, 6 month age. If you do it for grade, it would be reported at a like 3rd year, 5th month, or it's just going to be, you're going to have the main number and it'll be broken down into the months for both the age and grade scores. So age would be, 12 years, 4 months, 15 years, 2 months. Grade scores would look like 3rd grade, 5th month, or 2nd grade, 1st month. These two methods generalize the scores to a norm group, and they're not the most precise, but they are the most common and the easiest for others to be able to connect and get an idea of where the student is functioning without a lot of technical information. Percentile rank designates where the student falls in the norm group, and it shows the percent of students that earned less than the student. For example, if your student scores in the 72 percentile, then you could say they perform at equal or greater than 72% of the norm group. You can also say that they perform lower than 28% of the norm group. So you can do reporting based on how far they are from the very top of the group, or how far above they are from the very lowest of the group. It just kind of depends on how you want to report that. Standard scores are the raw scores transformed into a standard deviation. They use a bell curve to determine comparison of scores, and this is the most common with IQ testing that we'll see. Stanines are a derived score that is divided into 9 segments. So stanines have a mean of 5 and a standard deviation of 2, and this is the same for reporting on all tests that use a stanine. They're going to be the same type of format every time. So, questions. This presentation had quite a few technical terms. If you have any questions, or if you want more examples, or if you need anything clarified, please feel free to contact me either through email or through my phone extension there. In addition, at the end of this video, I'll go through, I have several slides that have the definitions for each of the terms that we discussed. So once you get to that point, feel free to pause and copy the terms. Feel free to take a screenshot and save them. Or if you'd like to contact me for a copy of the PowerPoint, I'd be more than happy to send that to you. So just as I'll go through them fairly quickly, so just know that you can pause at any time and do those prior screenshot or saving. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thanks.